Welcome to the last lesson in the Photoshop chapter. There have been a lot of new features to CS6, but since this series is focused on workflow and integration, let's talk about one of the most beneficial new updates, and that's all the things that you can do in the Layers panel. You can now assign effects to a group of layers, modify multiple layers all at once, search for layers, filter layers, and more. The file that I'm working on is called Big City Promo, and it's available in your Chapter 3 folder. When you open the file, you might get a missing font warning. You can substitute it with any font you choose. Before we talk about some of the cool new features for the Layers panel, notice the layer that I have selected. This is actually a smart object. You can always tell a smart object because it has a smart object thumbnail in the bottom right corner. Now, if you're wondering what a smart object is, it is a native file inside of another program. For example, our logo here is actually an Illustrator file that we've placed into Photoshop by going to File, Place, and choosing our Illustrator file. And when we do that, we get a smart object. If we were to double-click right here on this little thumbnail icon, we'd actually open Illustrator and do any editing we needed to do there. And we could close Illustrator, and then it would put it back into Photoshop. We could also edit the vector object right inside of Photoshop, and this is called non-destructive editing. Okay, just wanted to tell you that before we talk about the Layers panel. Now, what I want you to do is look up here and notice that for CS6, the Layers panel has been expanded just a little bit. As you know, any Photoshop document can have tons of different layers and groups and just get full of layers. Before CS6, to find any kind of layer, you'd really have to just scroll over in the Layers panel and look for anything that you needed to work on. Well, now we can actually filter. There are a few different filtering options to experiment with. You might notice the word dog here that's grayed out. That was the last search that I've done. What I'm going to do is click right over here on this little button to toggle our search results on and off. Right now, this little button is gray. If I were to click on it, well, it would become red, and all of the layers that I have with the word dog in the layer name become active. Well, what if we wanted to maybe search for cat? So we'll type in cat, and then we'll see any layers that contain the word cat in the layer name. Okay? Now again, you can toggle right here to temporarily turn the layer filtering off, and then click it again to turn it back on. Well, what if you want to search maybe by blending mode? Well, right here, this little drop-down list, you can see that mode is in this list among a few other filter items. Well, let's click mode and let's go up the list and choose multiply. You'll see our results are all of the layers with the multiply blending mode applied. Let's go here again. This time, let's search for layers with the overlay blending mode applied. So we'll choose overlay, and we do have 4 layers that have the blending mode of overlay applied, but we are going to need to see these, so we'll actually just go and turn the visibility on next to each one of these guys. Just like that, we filtered our document by a specific blending mode. Now here's the cool part. We can actually select these layers by holding down our Shift key, and then we could change the effect all at one time. So we've selected these 4 layers with the blending mode of overlay applied, and now let's see what happens if we go to soft light. Okay, and now you can see how easy it is to change multiple layers all at one time. Very nice. Well, what you will notice also is what happened to the Layers panel. Well, because we have a filter applied, none of our layers match the filter, and that's okay because we can change that back. Let's go here to this little red button and click one time to get all of our layers. So the layers are indeed still there. So in addition to the new filtering techniques that Photoshop gives us, here's something else that we can do. We can add effects to groups of layers. Let's take a look. Let's click this little twisty next to text, and you're going to see that we have a couple of layers with different text. Well, what if we'd like to apply an effect to each of these items? We can do that now very easily in Photoshop CS6. What we'll do is right here on the group, let's click one time to select all of the contents in that group, and then go down to the effects icon in the bottom of the Layers panel, and then we'll just choose whichever effect we'd like to apply. Let's maybe add a stroke. Alright, now I'll slide this little dialog box out of the way and maybe choose a different color besides black. maybe go with a nice yellow, and let's click OK. And now just like that, you can see that your stroke effect was applied to 2 layers at one time. Alright, so let's add one more effect. Why don't we go here to Bevel and Emboss. Let's check the Bevel and Emboss and then click the word Bevel and Emboss. And then you can select any style that you want. Maybe let's go with Pillow Emboss and change the technique to Chisel Hard. And just like that, both of our layers get the new effect. We click OK and we see how easy that is. Now what you want to remember is we did that by selecting the layer group here, not the individual layers. You may be thinking, well, what if I didn't want one of my layers to have that effect? No problem, just like before, you can move a layer out of a group simply by clicking it and dragging it above the layer group, and now that layer doesn't have the new effects.